go. On the money. Hello. Welcome to Hanging with the Hammer. Cue intro. Good morning and welcome to Hanging with the Hammer. It's another Saturday. Now let me see if I get my comments in here. I don't know if we have anybody on yet. I got one person on I see in the stream, and when you get a chance, write a comment. This week's show is my second week in a row. This is technically my fourth show. I did one kind of like impromptu show with Mike Fasano. I had a couple guests on 3 weeks ago with Chadwick Perry and Tate Berkey. And last week I did my own solo show for an hour. And today I am talking to nobody at this point in time, but that's okay. So we will see who jumps on in the next few minutes. I just saw the notification from YouTube that I'm on. Maybe I should go on a minute ahead of time. And that might be the way you do these things. I actually cue the broadcast. So this is something you do with StreamYard. You kind of cue the broadcast and you get it going. So I'm hoping a few of my friends jump on. Now, I have a couple little questions and a couple little thoughts I'm going to talk about today that are kind of Ask Girl Anything-ish, I'll call them. CCM Drummer, you are talking to me. Well, CCM Drummer, good morning. And you are one of the things I was going to talk about possibly today, exact versus stylized, because I watched your video this morning and I made a nice comment. I hope you saw my comment. So that may be one of the topics we talk about today. I had another question about a ride cymbal I used in my last video, a video called Who Are You, which is believe it or not, that's a gospel song. I have a student right now. His name's Sean Woodley. He's one of the guys that comes on the live stream a lot of times. And Sean asked me to learn a couple of his songs. I asked him, what are you listening to? What are you trying to learn? And I tried to get some of those songs to teach him some of the songs, so the basic parts, so he can get through them. And that was one of the songs. I actually did a cover of it, released it yesterday. Most people were like, what is this? It's kind of R&B-ish. It's kind of it's actually a gospel tune. If you listen to the lyrics tell you it's a gospel tune. It's talking about being with the Father. So I thought it was really a kind of a cool tune. But everybody, I must have had 7 or 8 comments about this particular cymbal. So the question was, what is this particular cymbal? It doesn't really have a lot of identifying markings on it, except it is a Paiste. I bought this cymbal in 2006 at Forks Drum Closet. My father had just passed away, and my mom had given me some money from after my father passed away. My father did leave my mom enough money to live the rest of her life, and then enough for me to kind of redistribute the rest of it to my brother and sister when my mom passed away in 2014. So that was good, So my mom was kind and she gave me some money, and it was around my birthday, and she said, go buy yourself something. And I bought this cymbal. Now, this cymbal was a prototype. And the way you know it's a prototype is inside here, there's some little markings, and one of them is an S. And the logo, which I've taken off because I really didn't like the way the logo looked. Paiste prototypes don't look really good, but if you look really close, you could probably see the logo kind of etched in there a little bit, or inked in there, I should say. But this is a 20-inch dark energy ride MK1 prototype. So with that being said, that's the cymbal. Now, what I've discovered about this cymbal is that my quest for the perfect Steve Gadd cymbal, this ended up being it. And I've listened to records that Steve plays on, those famous records in the 70s and early 80s, where he's got this really dry but dark ride cymbal. And this pitch of this particular cymbal happens to be very, very, very close to that Steve Gadd cymbal. So I think that's what my ear heard that day when I bought this cymbal more than anything else. And it's why I bought it. Now, I'd love to get a 22-inch version of this. This is made of the Paiste alloy, the Paiste signature alloy, which is the B15 alloy, I believe. But this particular cymbal has a great sound and is really awesome. So anyhow, that's what this is all about. So 20-inch dark energy Mark 1 prototype. Won't be getting rid of it. You know, I only paid $237 for this cymbal. So it was actually another well-priced cymbal. I also got another cymbal on the way that's coming very soon. So I'll be sharing that. I was supposed to be here yesterday, but something got delayed with FedEx. I bought a cymbal. It's one of those ones I've been talking about. So when it gets here, you will see it. But until then, you have to guess. Good morning, Little Drummer Channel. Jeremy, nice to have you today. And Ed Brooks, nice to have you. And Brandon McDuffie, nice to have you. Does anybody have a question for me today? If somebody's got a question, please post it in the comments. Jeremy says, hey, Earl, good morning. Finally caught a live show. Yes, good morning, and thank you for catching a live show. This is my 4th attempt at this, so I'm having fun. Saturday morning seems to work for me. I'm not a night owl. Matter of fact, my night times are kind of given to my wife. After years of being on the road doing, my corporate gig stuff I've done over the years, I value my night time. So that's one of the things. So, but I really appreciate those of you that are up early, those of you that live in Europe that get to catch this, because I did this at 9 o'clock at night. Unless you're a night owl, you wouldn't really catch the show. So, but does anybody got a question this morning? Anybody got something for me? Or should I ramble into something that I know KManKanDrum would like me to talk about, possibly? then I'll poke Matthew now. So I was watching KManKanDrummers recent post about stylized or exact. And at the end of watching the video, I heard Matthew's case for why exact is better than stylized. Well, he didn't say it was better than. I'm not going to put words into his mouth, especially with you on here. I can't do that, can I, Matthew? So, but why you prefer doing it. And there was a phrase you used, which basically kind of said to me that this is the reason why you do it is because this is how you see it, and that's one of the things. Let me explain how I make drum covers and why I make drum covers the way I do. For years, I had to learn songs to play gigs. So when you have to learn songs to play gigs and you're going to be playing with people doing a cover band situation, in the cover band situation, you have to learn how to play the song, basically all the parts and most of the fills. And then you've got to come in and play it with a group of people that don't play all their parts exactly the same way as the record. So one of the fun things for me doing drum covers these days with X-track stems and taking the drums out is that I get to play along with that band that recorded that song. And when I play along with that band that recorded that song, guess what? I get to try to interpret my parts like the previous drummer. And sometimes I hear something a little different than the other drummer did that I latch on to. Because playing music to me is always about using my ears and reacting to what I play. Now, I've got a cover coming out. I'm really excited about this cover. Probably nobody else is because no one else has covered this song. But this is a song I used to play in a wedding band back in the 80s with my wife and with a gazillion other wedding bands I played with. And it's a song called Always and Forever by Heatwave. And I went on YouTube. You don't usually do this before I do a cover, but usually after I do a cover, I will go see if others have done it and how they did it. And I found nobody did the song. And the only other version of the song that came up was the original band 25, 30 years later doing it at a concert that was filmed with an iPhone somewhere. And they didn't do it like the original. They had their own version of it that they've stylized, done their own thing to. But they're the band that did the song, so that's what they do with things. So when I did it, I really tried to get into the head of this drummer. And the drummer who played on this song played a lot of stuff. But I can tell you all the years of playing weddings, if I tried to do the stuff that I ended up doing in this cover, the kind of Buddy Rich, the triplety time, it's a 12/8 song, but kind of goes into a bouncy 3/3 thing, like almost like a waltz, a jazz waltz thing. If I had done that, I would have got fired from those gigs. So that's the point of the story. So I've learned music and I do covers to kind of emulate the drummer and to see what I can do with those things the way I would do it on a gig. And the funny thing is, when I talk about this, what I'm really saying to you is my process is I don't spend more than an hour on most drum covers. Many I only spend 15, 20 minutes on, and that's from learning the song to playing the song. I literally record everything I do. I sit down, I set the song up in the DAW, put the headphones on, turn the cameras on and start playing. And if I get a take between that time and when I'm done, that's it. And that's how it goes. And yesterday was one of those sessions that went exactly 40 minutes. This was the take before the last take. I went for one more take and it just wasn't in the pocket. I said, I'm done, turned it off, and it ended up being the last take. Sometimes it's 2 takes back. So that's how I do drum covers, and why I do drum covers that way is to work on my ears. Now, transcribing things is something I wish I spent more time in college learning how to do and spending more time doing it, actually, because I know how to do it. It just takes time to do it. It's actually, my ears are faster than transcribing, and that's why I do things the way I do. Welcome, Drum Covers by Bill and Gunter Drumico. Thank you all for being here. Little drummer channel, Jeremy said, regarding your cover perspective, I feel the same way. It's great to share your own vibe about the tune. Yeah, that's part of it. Part of it's my own vibe, but I really want to pay homage to the guy who did it before me. And I want to try to be similar, but getting every note exact, just, it's not, I wasn't there, you know? And a lot of times the songs I pick, as you know, a lot of old ones, they recorded them together. So there was really something special happening on those songs. So does anybody else have a question? Let's see. How long have you had that great Black Beauty snare drum? All right, I got a story for the Black Beauty snare drum too. I've had the Black Beauty snare drum for about probably 10 years now, pretty darn close to 10 years. Probably 2010, 2011, I got it. But this was a trade. I mean, it's actually on the kit today. This is the Black Beauty we're talking about. I put the Millennial throw off on it. This is actually a Millennial snare drum. It's actually from the 100th year anniversary, and it came with a head on it too. They had the Millennial head on it. And my friend Ken Burton is the one who bought the drum. So Ken bought the drum, and Ken and I trade things. So I didn't buy this drum, but it came through another trade. But let me tell you the story of the drum. Back in 1988, I was a Christian band. We did an album, Saved by Grace. All the rage was piccolo snare drums. I bought a brass piccolo. I told this story a couple weeks ago on something. I can't remember what. I went to New York to buy this brass piccolo. And in the same shop, this was Drummer's World, Barry Greenspan's shop. I used to go there often. I said to Barry, I said, hey, Barry, what else? You know, I'm looking to buy a brass piccolo. He goes, all right, well, I have the Pearl, and I've got the Yamaha, and the Yamaha was like almost 400, and the Pearl was like 315. And then he pulled down off the shelf a brass Superphonic from the 50s. It had the blue Ludwig badge on it. It was before Ludwig really purchased back the name and all the things that was going to happen with Ludwig in the 60s, before the Ringo era. But it was brass. It was a brass shell with a, you know, with a seam on it, and it wasn't a Black Beauty. It looked brass, but it had a couple of blemishes on it, and I think he wanted like 350 for it, or 325. My wife was with me, and I said, which drum should I get? And of course, my wife and I looked at it and said, well, you wanted the piccolo, and it's brand new, and this is the price, and it's a little bit cheaper. Get that drum. So I bought the piccolo. Well, the funny thing was, when Ken Burton brought this drum into my studio and I played it, it brought back the memory of that brass Superphonic. And I was like, I got to have this drum. So what can I trade you for it? And I had a phosphorus bronze hand-hammered Ludwig Superphonic from the 1980s that a friend of mine, I traded for that drum, my friend Scott, and he got it for me. Pretty much he got one, and then he traded back for his Noble Cooley. So there's like a multiple trades in this whole scenario. Long and the short of it, I've never gotten the phosphorus bronze back. Ken will never trade it back to me, and I'm very happy with the Ludwig Black Beauty. But one day, I will get a 6.5 by 14 Black Beauty, I hope. So, but let's see what you said. Jeremy said those Millennial Series drums throw offs are sweet. Yeah, there are some good things about the throw off. I actually like it. But the one strange thing about this throw off, and I don't know if it was an original Ludwig part or not, I can't remember. I think it was, is there's a little screw that popped out and now it's out. And now I got to figure out how to fix that. And I can't find the screw. So it's always something with drums. Let's go back a little bit. Ed Brooks said, and hi, Robbie Rock Drummer. Thank you for being here and catching the show today. Ed Brooks said, in your opinion, with maple drums set to go for under $1,400 budget. Oh, what's my opinion on a maple drum set to go for under $1,400? There's a lot of drums under $1,400 that are maple drums. My favorite drums are solid maple drums, like Noble Coolies. So Noble Coolies Craviatos. I've never had a Craviato, but I've had a bunch of Noble Coolies. And I can totally tell you that Noble Coolies are the way to go. If you want a maple sound, you want that big rock maple sound. So I would say look for a solid shell Noble Coolie, or a Dunette solid shell, or a Craviato is the name. So you're going to pay a little more for the Craviato. But all these drums are around $1,000, $1,000. But there are other maple shell drums that are great drums if you want a ply drum or a stave drum, you know. I have a maple Gretsch that matches my kit that I didn't buy with my kit. That sounds great now. It didn't always sound great, and didn't sound great till I got bearing edges done. So that's kind of the funny thing about that. All right, let's go. Matthew, CCM drummer. As a cover artist, we all have to play our strengths. Very good point there. As a visual learner, transcribing and reading charts comes easier to me than other drummers who may be auditory learners. Very good point, Matthew. There are differences in how we learn. Some of us have to do it to learn. Some of us have to hear it to learn. Some of us have to see it to learn. And some of us use all the different combinations together. My day job is training and development and safety. And I've always been put all three of those types of learning into your learning program. So that's one of my things. So, but yeah, thanks for the acknowledgement on the story. Drum covers by Bill. What'd you say? Hey, Drumico, hope you're having a great weekend. Cool. Drumman 190. Hi, Matthew. How are you today? Hey, I hope you're doing well. What are your go-to drum heads? Good question. That's a good one. My present drum heads for this particular kit, I just switched over. This is my Gretsch kit right here. I'm sitting at the Gretsch kit. I just switched over to Ambassadors coated on the top and Ambassador coated on the bottom for all the drums. It's the first time I changed the bottom heads in a long time. But I don't have a go-to head. I use all kinds of heads for different sounds and different things. But I have found over the last 5-7 years that these drums really speak with single ply heads. And they were actually made for single ply heads. The concert tom kit, I like the clear heads on there. I just went back and put on some vintage Ambassadors I had hanging around on my concert tom kit lately. So you see a coated vintage Ambassador. That's what I was using on these drums prior to the clear heads that were on these drums. So I had some vintage Ambassadors for about a year. Vintage Ambassadors are a 2-ply head with a thinner second ply. So you got a 7.5 mil top head and a 3 mil bottom head for almost a 10.5 mil total drum head for the vintage Ambassadors. And they were like the first drum heads Remo made. That's why they call them vintage Ambassadors. So they were kind of like a light 2-ply head. I like those heads a lot, actually. I like Emperors. I've always liked 2-ply heads on drums. They got that thicker, thuddier sound too. I have used Evans. I like the G2s. I'm not a fan of the G1s. I have a set of hydraulic heads on my maple Gretsch kit, my little maple Gretsch kit for church. Right now I'm playing with clear hydraulics on those drums, on the tops. And they sound great for that environment I play in, which is a large church environment with a high ceiling and no microphones on the drums. So I have to play acoustically in the room, which means I have to control my dynamics. and I have to also make it speak, and they have that certain sound to them, so I enjoy that. But I like pinstripes. You could tell I like a lot of different heads. I've had a lot of different heads. If you watch a lot of my older drum covers, you'll see all kinds of heads, all the way back to Aquarian. So a lot of that stuff, a lot of different heads. But thanks for the question, Matthew. I do appreciate that. That was a good question. Let's see what else. CCM drummer again. On the other side of the token, I appreciate those drummers like you are very versatile, have a big vocabulary, chops, and can learn a song in less than an hour and pull it off a good cover. Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that. And I know that's what you really meant in your what you were talking about. So those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, check out CCM drummer. Check out his current thing on stylized versus exact drums. And it's just a philosophy. You know, we all do things a little differently here. And that's what makes the community what it is. The community is what it is by us all being individuals and having fun what we're doing. I think the biggest thing in doing drum covers is letting the fun factor come through. When people can see you're having fun and enjoying yourself, like when I watch a Jeremy drum cover, Little Drummer Channel, I can see the fun coming through. You know, I see his facial expressions, I hear it in his playing. That's what it's got to be about. Gunter's the same thing, Drumico. You watch him play, you see him having fun. Even drum covers by Bill. All you guys on here that I know you're playing, you guys are all having a good time. Except the master drummer. I can never see your face, master drummer. Good morning. Thanks for being here. If you take that mask down one of these days, then I'll be able to see your face. But I'm pretty sure you're having a good time too when you do this. So that's why we do drum covers. Is that fun? Because you don't make any money on drum covers. Trust me. Matter of fact, there are more headaches than not a lot of times when they get taken down on you and blocked. And it's really a strange world out there sometimes on YouTube. YouTube just added a new part to publishing a video this week. I don't know if any of you have seen it yet, but it actually does the copyright check before it lets you get a strike. So, but I've always taken my drum covers and published them as private. So I never ever get a strike because of that, unless you try to jam it on, like I tried to do with the blood, sweat, and tears thing that said it was a partial block, but was really a full block. There was about 158 countries it was blocked in, so it really wasn't going anywhere. Let's see what else we got here. Jeremy has a quick question regarding head baffling. Okay, I'll take that question in a second. And Tim Clinker. Sorry, Tim. I'm terrible at reading names. I will get to your question, too, about Larry London. So let's take Jeremy's question real quick. Question regarding head baffling. What have you done in the past regarding baffling? The Eagles drum sound, they used to paper towels with a tape approach for the 70s sound and vibe. Thanks. As far as dampening drums, let's look at what I've got today on my drum kit. Right now, you got a moon gel here. But this is an interesting muffler. This is something that they do in Nashville. They take some felt and some tape, and it kind of pops up and down. If you watch any of Chadwick Perry's videos, he's been using this. But I first saw a guy named Paul Lime use this technique. This is one of these drum dot things. I don't know if you can see that little dot right there. These are not worth buying, by the way. They don't really move very well, and they get stuck to the drum head. And another thing is the old tape trick. This is the tape trick with a piece of gaff tape, and you make a little lip. This was very common in the 70s, this particular technique. This muffler over here is a Rogers external muffler, which I am a big fan of. By the way, I bought a couple of these used on eBay right here. And they clip on. One guy wrote me to say these clips do scratch your drums. So if you're one of those kind of people that really worry about that, be careful. Go this way with it. There it is. But you can see it. These are really kind of cool. Of course, I've done everything from duct tape or masking tape with a folded paper towel taped to the drum. That's one of my favorite things to do to get that 70s sound. A lot of the Eagles drum sound had to do with being no bottom head. That's another part of the equation to making those drums sound the way they do. Yes, wallets do work. I saw that in the comment from From Matthew, Drumman 190, he said wallets work great. I actually have a snare drum with a wallet taped to it, an old wallet of mine with a piece of gaff tape taped to it, and that's all that drum does is makes that one sound. So it depends on your drums. If you want to have something that you can change back and forth, that's a whole other thing. By the way, I got one other thing to show you. Since it's show and tell today, I just bought a big fat muffler. I've never used this really, but I've made these myself. I wanted to see what the big difference is. I'm going to try it at church tomorrow, a little bit tomorrow for the service. So one of the problems with my drums, when you've got things on them, the big fat muffler doesn't work. So you have to have a drum with nothing on it pretty much. The other famous snare drum muffling technique is the zero ring. And Steve Gadd made that famous, and he didn't make it by buying them. They used to call them Richie rings too. They sold a product called Richie rings. Then Noble Cooley made zero rings out of drum heads. But we all made them back in the 70s like Steve did. You took an old drum head and cut about an inch, and you took a pair of scissors and cut around it. I got a whole bunch of those hanging around here that I use for different things. So let me go back to the question before that, which was Tim's question. He said, thanks for sharing your knowledge. What are your favorite Nashville players? Larry London was a favorite of mine. Great question. Nashville players are always a topic that I like to talk about. My favorite Nashville players today would be Paul Lime, of course. But there's a couple guys I know in Nashville. These are guys that do a lot of CCM work and country work. John Hammond is a friend, actually. He played on an album. He replaced me on an album. So John Hammond's a friend, and so I really dig his drumming. It's good to be replaced by somebody so much better than you. He's an incredible drummer. His brother Mark was an incredible drummer back in the 80s and 90s when he was playing. But John played all through that period. Great drummer. Greg Morrow, another great drummer. Dixie Chicks, James Taylor he's played with. A gazillion country albums. He played with Amy Grant. Most of these guys that I'm telling you about all played a lot of CCM music. Paul Lime was one of the early CCM drummers on all kinds of Christian albums, from Amy Grant to Phil Keaggy, and I really enjoyed his drumming. And before he was played with Lionel Richie and all the other stuff he did, I mean, Paul Lime's on a gazillion hit records. And then he moved to Nashville to get his family out of LA. That's what he told me. He just needed to get out of LA because of family things. His kids were growing up and didn't want to raise them in LA. And he moved to Nashville and he became the top Nashville session drummer. Him and Eddie Byers. Eddie Byers is a good player too, but I think Paul's got more skills, to be honest. That's my opinion. But Eddie's got his thing. And the funny thing about drummers and people liking drummers, half of it's what you play and half of it's who you are. And that's the way it is in life, by the way. You want to get a gig, it's not just your playing. You have to play well. If you get into that level, you've got to play really well, but you also got to be a very cool human being to hang with, because the hang is really part of it. So once you get in and they like your hang and they like your approach and they like the way you don't overdo something, but you do suggest things, and they get to know you and trust you, that makes you a valuable player. And there's some amazing drummers in Nashville. There's a whole new crop of amazing drummers coming up too, by the way. There's a kid named Jared Neal who played on my friend Danny Luis's album, who I've done demo work with down here. He's a friend of mine. He went to Nashville and did an album, and this kid, Jared Neal, is on playing everybody's stuff now. So there's a lot of guys like that. There's another guy named Dan Needham who plays with Michael McDonald and Peter Cetera, who plays on a gazillion Christian albums. Dan Needham's a great drummer too. Another favorite Nashville drummer of mine happens to be Steve Brewster. And that's another guy you don't hear a lot about, but he's played on a lot of country art sessions, but he's done a lot of CCM sessions. He did a lot of the Rich Mullins stuff when Rich was alive. So these are all great Nashville drummers that I've followed their careers, you know. There's a couple other ones, you know, the guy who played with Toto, what's his name? I follow him, Forrest. What's his last name? You guys all know him, Forrest. Oh, what the heck I can't believe I'm blanking. That's my 60-year-old thing. I can't really do much about that. but great players. Larry London was an amazing drummer. Okay, an amazing drummer. So I think Larry was one of the top Nashville guys. He died way too young. So, but I hope that gives you some thoughts, Tim. Those are great players. All right. Ed Brooks says check out Simon Phillips on no dampening. Simon Phillips doesn't like dampening at all, but Simon Phillips, he tunes a certain way. His drums sound different, and here's the thing about Simon Phillips, Ed. This is what I really want to say about Simon Phillips. Simon Phillips, from the day he became Simon Phillips and guys were hiring Simon Phillips for their thing, he would not put up with engineers saying to him, well, you don't need that many drums on this. He's actually, I've had articles of him in Modern Drummer talking about this. So this is where I'm talking. I'm quoting him from Modern Drummer, paraphrasing him from Modern Drummer. He basically would come to sessions and do a commercial. And the guy would say to him, the engineer would say, hey, wait a second, you don't need this many drums. It's a really short 30-second thing. What are you doing? He goes, my sound is this kit. It resonates a certain way. That's Simon's philosophy, and he's never changed that. And his kit looks almost the same way for every gig he does. He rarely does a gig on a small kit. I've seen him play a small kit a couple times. Usually it must be a rental scenario and at a festival or something where they asked him to jump on for a few minutes and he does it. For the most part, Simon Phillips' sound is Simon Phillips' sound, which is the bass drums the way he does it, the paint cans and the mics inside the double-headed bass drums, and the way he mics the toms. And he is an engineer. He knows how to get his sound. So his sound is amazing. He doesn't muffle anything. But if you're trying to replicate the sounds of somebody that made an album like the 70s, you might have to tape your heads up to get that sound. A lot of guys say to me, I love that snare sound for that song. Yeah, you love the snare sound because I'm trying to get the snare dialed in the way it sounded on the record as best I can. I'm more about the sound, by the way. That's another aspect of my drum covers, too. I try to get the sounds really dialed into closely what they're doing because I think that's part of what I bring to drum covers. It's not just playing them, but it's also the sound of them. And being an engineer, I enjoy that aspect of it. So let's see what else we got. CCM drummer, what do you think about using rings to muffle your drums? I like the ring approach. Matter of fact, this week I was watching somebody talking about rings, and you know who it was? It was for concert toms. It was Thomas Lang was showing, he did like 37 minutes on a concert tom kit. And because he's Thomas Lang, people probably watched it for 37 minutes, which was really cool. And he was showing his new DW concert tom kit, and he puts clear emperors on the top, and then he drops these little rings he makes out of old drum heads on each of the toms. I am going to try that on my concert tom kit, get rid of the tape just to see what happens. I've never been big on using it on toms, but I'm more of a guy that uses it on snare drums. I've used them many times on snare drums. Let's see. Mass drummer. The new Evans UV heads are worth trying. They sound warm, and the coating, and they last a long time, and both your sets sound great. Well, thank you for that compliment. I've looked at the UV heads, and I do want to try them someday. I really do. Remo's just cheaper. You know, I'm really strange about buying stuff. I'm one of those guys that looks for a deal on things, you know. This week, I'm going to tell you guys the secret of, I started at the beginning. I said I wasn't going to say anything about it. I did some work this week. I did some video work, and I've been teaching some lessons, and I'm saving. I only buy things for my studio when I have money that comes from me in the studio doing something. So this week I did a video voiceover project for somebody, a friend of mine, on a online training program for the cable industry. And he's a good friend of mine. And I've done work for him before. And he called me up and said, hey, can you do these? And I knocked in an evening, I knocked out, you know, pretty quick, knocked it out. So it was really fun, quick money. So I said to my wife, I didn't tell my wife nothing. I just told her after the fact that I told her when I started doing the lessons with Sean that when I do these lessons, I'm going to put this money away for me. It's not going towards our deck project out there that we're working on right now. I said, that money is not, that's coming out of the fund that you've been saving. That's your little slush fund, how we're doing all that. And you've got it all figured out. So that's fine. But this is studio money. This is mine. So I've been looking at a Paiste 22-inch ride cymbal. They go for about $400. And this goes back to the head thing. I'm always looking for the deal. So I've been looking at these ride cymbals for 2-3 years now, technically, probably seriously for a year. And $400, I don't want to spend $400 for a ride cymbal. I just don't. That's not what I want to do. The most I've ever spent on a ride cymbal was $463. It was for a 22-inch Crope in 2014. And to this day, I question that. The other most expensive was my 24-inch Giant Beat, which I bought for almost the price that they were selling them for at Guitar Center. I think I got it for a little under $300. This was about 6-7 years ago. A little under $400, I should say. It was like $395 or something stupid like that. And I paid way too much for that cymbal because it had been played on in the store, and it was the most beat up Giant Beat I ever received. The rest of my Giant Beats and all my Paiste cymbals that I've been buying online on eBay as used cymbals. They say used. I go, used, okay. Got 5 available at a music store. They're used. Oh, okay. 5 available used cymbals at a music store, 22-inch ride cymbals. And we're selling them not for $300 because they're used. We're selling them for $279.95. That's why I bought that cymbal. I said, so let's see what comes. I'm going to do an unboxing on that cymbal when it gets here. And let's see how used it is. Because my 18-inch Crash I just bought was $218 and it was used. And the new ones were like almost $300. So if you want to know how to buy cymbals that you can buy like that, because you can buy Paistes this way because Paistes sound the same. When you listen to a 22-inch Big Beat, it sounds like a 22-inch big Beat the same almost every cymbal. There's very little difference. You don't get away with it as much with Zildjians, but today they're a lot closer than they used to be, or Sabians. But Paistes are extremely consistent cymbals. So when it comes to my drum heads, it's about bargains. So if I ever see the UVs as a bargain, I will buy them, unless it's the sound I really want. But I have wanted to try the UVs, so that's something I will do. Let's see. Yep, check out the music Nashville. List goes on. Of course it does. There's tons of drummers in Nashville. Jeremy said, like the O-rings. I like the O-rings too. I use them mostly on snare drums because the toms tend to hear the rattle and the buzz. That's usually my problem with the toms too. Apparently Thomas Lang's getting away with it though. That's the interesting thing. CCM drummer, your talent will get your foot in the door, but your character, that will keep you in the door. You are exactly correct about that. It is about your character when you start working with people. But that's the way it is in life, all things in life. And that's a discussion point for the problem with our new world we live in. The new drumming world is me and a camera on YouTube or me and a camera on Instagram. And guess what? I don't have to interact with anybody the way I want to. I can do it however I want to do it. So I don't have to care about you. But in the days where you had to take your music out of your basement to get seen, you had to learn the other skill set, which was, hey, I'm working with people and people have to like me. And being likable is a real big important part about being a band. So I can't overstress that to anybody. You've got to be a good human being. And that comes down to how you treat people. And when I talk about how you treat people, what I'm really talking about is the golden rule. Treat others how you want others to treat you. That's a basic starting point. My starting point is Christ in me, the hope of glory. So for me, it's like I don't really have a choice but to show compassion and love to people. And I choose that over trying to lord power over people. I think love conquers all. There's things about what the Beatles said that seem like so new agey and all out there and stuff. But the concept they were trying to say was love your neighbor. That's a very Christian thing to say, believe it or not. So let's see what we got. We got more down here. Being a good dude and also musicality is huge. I agree. Thank you, Jeremy. Gunter, Earl, your sound is really amazing. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Dremico. Thomas Lang is one of my favorites. Yeah, he's a great drummer, excellent drummer. Shannon Forrest was who I was looking for. Tim, you got it. And Steve Brewster and Paul Lime are amazing players. John Hammond was a huge inspiration. Tons of Southern gospel. Yes, John Hammond was playing almost exclusively Southern gospel projects before I met him, and he played on that Saved by Grace album. But then all of a sudden, his brother took a little bit more of a backseat, and then he started getting pushed out into the CCM artist mainstream, and then he ended up with Amy. Matter of fact, I saw John Hammond last year before COVID. It was that I went to see Amy Grant with my wife. Now, my wife interviewed Amy Grant years ago, long time ago, 1989, a magazine called Gig Magazine. She interviewed Greg Morrow and Terry McMillan for Modern Drummer back in 89, 90. So if you have that issue with Greg Morrow in it, I can't remember what issue it was. She did the article for that, and she interviewed them over the phone, but we met them at the Lead Me On tour, but the beginning of the tour and the end of the tour. So we saw the beginning of the tour at the Nassau Coliseum in Long Island in 88. And then I think we saw them in the back end of the tour at the Garden State Arts Center, which is now the PNC Arts Center, I think, or something like that, in New Jersey. And we went backstage and we saw Greg and Terry McMillan. And I've seen Greg a few times in Nashville when I go to Forks Drum Closet. Believe it or not, we've run into him once with my wife, once by myself. Really nice guy. So we were at the Amy Grant concert last March, or end of February, right before COVID, very last weekend of February in Orlando. And it was a pre-show to their book shows. This was like a concert in a church. So it was really a strange show. And they were having a rough night. They were having some rough times with sound, rough times with arrangements. And it wasn't anybody's fault. It was all Amy changed the keys on the whole show because of where she sings today. Thing about vocals is vocalists' range changes as they get older. There's nothing you can do about it. And her range changed from when she was younger, and she was trying to do them at the younger range, and it wasn't working, so they rearranged things. But John was filling in for Greg Morrow, and Greg Morrow's drums were there. And when I saw the drum kit sitting there pre-show, I'm going to my wife, "That looks like Greg Morrow's drums. Maybe we'll get to go say hi to Greg after the show." Because they had Bosphorus cymbals. I was talking to Greg Morrow about this in Nashville one day in Forks Drum Closet. He was looking at Bosphorus cymbals. He was a Zildjian guy, but he was digging Bosphorus. He had a whole bunch of Bosphorus. So these were all his Bosphorus cymbals, and John plays Meinl. So I didn't think John Hammond was coming up. And as soon as they sat down to play, it was John Hammond. I knew it was John. So we went up backstage, not backstage, but up to the stage, front of the room. And I got a picture with John Hammond. We talked a few minutes and about life and where things were at in life and stuff. But he said he hated playing Greg Morrow's cymbals. That's what he told me. He said, "I just wish I had my Meinl cymbals." So it's a funny thing. Drummers and equipment is a funny thing. Let's see. Lori Jones. Hi, Lori. Nice to see you today. And Jim Flies too. Thanks for dropping in today. I got some more questions. Oh, thank you. I love the questions. And Stuart's here today too. Stuart Barrett Jr., thank you for being here. And Drum and Drummer Channel, thank you for dropping in. Let's see what we got question-wise. Let's keep going. Shannon Forrest, Steve Brewster, okay. Jim Flies too. By the way, check out Jim Flies too cover of Africa with all these different drummers playing it. It's pretty wild. He does Buddy Rich and John Bonham and a billion others, and he's already got 1 million hits on it almost. So help him get to 1 million. He's darn close. I think it's like 750,000 or something crazy like that. So I don't know how guys get him in the stream. I have like one video that I'm just pushing up there slowly every year, a few more tens of thousands on, but I haven't hit 100,000 on it. I don't know how YouTube works, to be honest. YouTube doesn't make any sense to me. Doesn't matter how many videos I push out. You got to do YouTube for yourself, but Jim does it for himself, and I'm glad that video kind of went. It's a very great video. So Jim says, looking at old drum catalogs, it costs like $70 for a 22-inch K Zildjian ride cymbal back in the 50s. That makes it worth between $500 and $700 today. You're correct about that. It's funny when you look at what the prices of stuff was back in the day, isn't it? In 1979, when I bought this Gretsch kit. Now, my original Gretsch kit was not the 8 and the 10. I have an 8 and a 10 with this kit. It was an 8x12, 9x13, 14x14, 16x16, 14x20, and I bought a Slingerland snare drum with it. I bought 4 Pearl cymbal stands, booms, the newer boom stands then. Had them put Pearl hardware on the bass drum. I bought a Slingerland hi-hat stand, and I believe I bought a Rogers seat for the kit, and the whole kit together in 1979 cost $1,100. Everything, all that stuff. And today I probably could easily get $1,500 for this kit, the way it is, beat up, banged up, and everything. So vintage drums cost a lot of money today, and you can get it's a good investment if you want to get your money back on it. But old K's, forget about it. The funny thing about old K's is they don't all sound all that good. I had one bout with K Zildjian cymbals, and I'm going to have my friend Scott Hazen on one day, and we're going to talk about those cymbals. But I have a good friend of mine from New Jersey. His name is Dave Jones. He was in a band with me, and then I played a lot of club dates with him, and he's a worship leader, and I played a lot of worship gigs with him. He gave me a set of 14-inch K's Istanbul K hi-hats. Very thin, like 600 grams, 700 and something gram bottom. Extremely thin and dark. Beautiful cymbals that his father had in a closet when he died. And he said, I don't know what to do with these. His son was a drummer, but he knew his son was going to tear them up. So he gave them to me. He said, you just can't sell them. I never sold them, Dave, just so you know. I did give them to my friend Scott, who was the jazz drummer. He still has them to this day. And those cymbals are probably worth $2,000 or $3,000 because that's what they are. I had his Noble Cooley for a while. I was part of the deal. So, I mean, I got something out of it, you know. Cymbals cost a lot of money. Drum and drummer channel. Just want to say hi, Earl, and to everyone else. I'm a relatively new drummer from Brisbane, Australia. Well, welcome. Thanks for being on. A lot of the community is here today. I got 11 people. That's not bad. Stuart said, what are your thoughts on vintage Ludwigs, like 1920 snare drums? Truthfully, the 1920 snare drums, coming from somebody who actually has one. When I was talking to John Robinson, I did an interview with John Robinson, John J.R. Robinson, which is on my YouTube channel. If you guys look up John J.R. Robinson 2020, you will see the interview. During that interview, I think we talked a little bit about his snare collection. And he had some 20s Ludwig brass snare drums, one of the early Black Beauties. And I don't think they're as well made as they were today, but, you know, I think they're a little overpriced. If you're a collector, you're looking for something else. If you're a player, it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, the interesting thing about John Robinson, he sold off most of his vintage drums, but he got stuck with this 120s Black Beauty. And the reason why he got stuck with it was modified. And once it was modified, it wasn't worth anything to anybody. But to him, it sounds great, so he keeps it. He has it. But that's the funny thing about drums. If you modify or do anything to them, their vintage value becomes a lot less. Now, I will say something about Gretsch drums from the 70s, because you will start seeing these kits coming up as people die. A lot of Gretsch drums that were made during the 70s, the Baldwin era of Gretsch drums, they made the worst hardware, especially mounting hardware. And a lot of the drum shops around the country were putting different hardware on the drums. So you will find a lot of Gretsch drums from the 70s that have Rogers hardware, Slingerland hardware, Ludwig hardware, and by the late 70s, more Pearl hardware and Rogers hardware. So it all, and then Yamaha into the early 80s. And then Gretsch started making a good tom mount, and they stopped modifying the Gretsch drums. So you will find them all over the place. So if you find an old, stop sign badge Gretsch drum from the 70s on a kit, and it's got a Rogers mount on it or a Slingerland mount, that probably was done by the drum shop. That's the way they did things. So same thing with old 60s Ludwig kits, where during the Ringo era, a lot of times, like even Ringo had a kit with a Rogers tom arm, You saw that a lot. So guys that were like the pro drummers that didn't like the hardware of the day, the rail consulate, they went with the Rogers tom mount, which looked cooler and was more sturdy. That's what they would do. So pretty wild. Lori Jones says, I paid £60 for a new beat hi-hats in 1976. Yeah, they were cheaper back then. Weren't they? A lot cheaper. Let's see. Jim Flies too. Your Toto Africa was great. That was from Jeremy. Great. Awesome. So I hope that answered your question, Stuart. Hope it did. Good questions today. Any other questions coming my way? Let's see. Drumming daily for fun, relaxation. I'm subbed to a few. Please here. Appreciate the time and effort put into sharing your talents with us newbies. Oh, thank you. I enjoy doing drum covers. And as you guys know, I am crazy enough to put something out almost every day these days. So that's just me having fun, though. Any other questions today? I got a new one. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Please don't hate me for drumming on DTX 750 Yamaha kit. No, we got a lot of E-drummers here. By the way, Drumico's got some nice E-drums he plays on. I've got a couple other guys that have E-drums. So, some people don't have a choice but to use E-drums. And maybe one day that's where I'll end up. I am blessed. That's all I can say. When I talk about my life, I talk about being blessed to have a space to record drums in, and have two spaces to record drums. I am blessed to have two kits set up and mic'd and ready to go at all times. So that's a blessing right there. So I did create this 3-car garage for being a recording studio when we moved here in 2005, and I've done a lot of things here, so that's the cool part about it. So it's not like I haven't done anything here, but it definitely didn't make $1 million here either. So let's see what we got. Lori Jones says, choose a snare for the sound, not the looks. That's correct. And that's, if you look at most of my snare drums, that's what they are today. It's a certain sound, some drums do more and can do more. And if you only have one drum, if somebody said to me, well, if I only have one drum, what drum would you buy? Truthfully, this 5x14 Black Beauty, you can tune it down to get that fat sound if you want to out of it. So this is a great one drum to have. The same with that Noble Coolie. That Noble Coolie you can crank up like a piccolo and you can drop it down pretty quickly too. Probably the best mid-range drum though would be a 6.5x14 Black Beauty, probably. And of my drums, probably my most mid-range drum is probably my 6.5x14 DMR cast aluminum, which gets a lot of compliments from people too. So, any other questions? Let's see. Little Drummer Channel. You got to play what you can when you can. It's a blessing to be able to play. Agreed. Couldn't agree more, Jeremy. It is a blessing to be able to do the things we do. So, and you look at each day as a blessing. That's the other thing. Each day is an opportunity, to look at the world, half full versus half empty. My philosophy of life is look at things more on the positive side than the negative, because there's lots of negativity around us. And that negativity does not produce life in us. And the older you get, it more affects your health and all kinds of things. So, Lori Jones says, muffling a snare drum. Best way to muffle a snare drum. Thank you, Jeremy, for saying amen. The best way, and thanks, Stuart, thank you for answering my question, Earl. Can you talk a little bit about your tuning concepts? Okay. Well, I'll move that with muffling a snare drum and tuning concepts real quick. Again, we talked a little bit about muffling before. When it comes to muffling a snare drum, there's a lot of different things you can do. Let me see if I can bring this down on the kit a little bit. Let's see, drive it in a little bit. Knock the water over. All right, there's my drums. All right. This is a new tuning trick. Let's see if I got the key. So I don't know how that sounds to you guys. Here's a trick. Like a lot of times, See, that was a little down. So that's a more of a middle tuning. There's a way of basically taking your drum from this middle tuning and just take one of the lugs and detune it. And it brings the pitch down just that way. See, I got a fat drum. All I did was just detune the lugs. Now I'm back in that range. Now, I find that a lot of times I just do that naturally by detuning this lug. But it's better if you detune it across from where you're hitting. And apparently this is a technique that a studio drummer in the UK did. And I just heard about. I forget his name. I did this a few weeks ago, and I got a lot of compliments about my snare drum. Nobody knew what I did, but that's what I did. I detuned. And then you put the dampening on it. And now you got that real plot, kind of almost dead thing. So let's go back. Oops, don't want to knock the camera off. That would have been bad news. This is back to the big fat snare drum. So let's play with the big fat snare drum. A little more open for a big fat snare drum on it. I actually don't like the way that sounds as much. It's got like a strange overtone to it. I don't know if you guys are hearing that, but just something. So as far as drum, tuning techniques for toms, first I try to keep them in tune, and after you play them a while, lugs do loosen. So I guess I tune kind of like thirds or fourths usually. That's like a triad. I don't know. I try to get a pleasant tone. The bottom head's not overly tight. Sometimes it may even seem a little looser than the top head. There's a philosophy that says you tighten the bottom head, loosen the top head. I don't necessarily agree with that. Some believe you get them both exactly the same. I find a lot of times if I loosen the bottom head a little bit more than the top head, it sounds better. Actually, these drums sound pretty good. I should play a drum cover, shouldn't I? It's about that time. How we doing? I don't know if I answered that question at all, by the way. Thanks. Tuning concept. If you lower the tuning on it, it will help with the big fat muffler. Yeah, I know. Doesn't that kind of defeat what you're trying to do with the big fat muffler, though? You just want to throw it on and change the sound. To me, it just doesn't sound as good as I thought it was going to sound. I'm going to try it this weekend, though. I'll give you more on that. I think that was Ash. No, it wasn't Ash Schoen. No, I know Ash is. He might have talked about it, too. This was an old UK session drummer. He was a big band drummer, and it was actually a guy was showing a snare drum from this drummer. This drummer died years ago, and he had one of his 5x14 chrome over brass Ludwig snare drums, and he was talking. It was at a vintage drum show, and he was talking about how he detuned the lug. That was his trick, and I never really heard that, but I knew Jeff Porcaro did something like that with his toms. He would detune lugs, so you might actually see almost like a ripple in the head. And Buddy Rich used to do the same thing. There's a famous Buddy Rich story about William Ludwig coming to one of the concerts in the late 70s with Buddy Rich playing his bass drum. It's in Modern Drummer somewhere. I read it in Modern Drummer. And he came to the show, and the bass drum was sounding perfect. And all of a sudden, Bill Ludwig saw like the wrinkle in the front head with his Ludwig logo on it, And he went up to the drum and tuned it up. And Buddy saw it, and Buddy was like, "What are you doing? What are you doing to my drums?" He said, "You got a wrinkle in the head." He goes, "Don't touch anything. It sounds great. Leave it alone. Don't touch it." So it's funny how a little wrinkle may not affect the sound, just affects the way it looks. And you look at it and you go, "Something's wrong. It's got to be wrong because there's a wrinkle in the head," but it's not necessarily true. So, any other questions today? I know we've hit the 1 hour mark, and that's usually the perfect time to call it a day here. Thank you all for being on the show and being with me and asking questions. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys. I hope you enjoyed my little rant. Next week, I'm trying to get Kelly Kusomoto to come on the show with me, and we'll do more of a discussion back and forth. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to do. Thanks, Tim, about the 505s. That's what those are, by the way, on my hi-hats. So I'm trying to bring Kelly Kusomoto on the show next week. I have some other people I want to bring on. Maybe some of you will come on someday. That might be kind of fun. We can chat about our philosophies. Thank you all for watching my show today. Thanks, Bill, for being on. Thank you, the 11 guys that are on. The rebroadcast will be up so you guys can watch it then. I really do appreciate this. I still want to do my Ask Girl Anything. So if you have a question, send it to Ask Girl Anything or on any of my videos. I will try to do an Ask Girl show where I just answer questions like that. But I enjoyed this format a lot. This is a lot of fun. Thank you all for being here today. Everybody, have a great weekend. Enjoy life. Praise the Creator. Thank you for everything. God bless. Bye-bye.